I'm your co-host, Kenny Buller.
I'ma clap the trappers, cause y'all in the for them actors.
Welcome on the Second Floor Podcast.
I've been rolling around with all my goons and all my savages. I just want the
We would have dreamt of something like this, and here it is.
It's Ray Ray with the heaters, got the track sounding immaculate.
Looking kinda dapper, but it be chillin', this don't matter about my business, so I spit.
Rolling.
All right, let's dive in, guys. Welcome to the Second Floor Podcast. I'm with my co-hosts, Karam, Cassius, and myself, Kenny. And on this series, we display and talk about current events that are happening in the world. And we want to ask you, do you agree or do you disagree with what's happening? And along the way, you get to hear our opinions. So let's talk about the presidential election coming up. And there is someone who, you know, us three have been paying special close attention to. That is, I'm sure you guessed it, the one and only Vivek Ramaswamy. There's a lot of things that he's saying that is known to be controversial to some degree, but also, if you look at it, very raw, very real. There's a side of him that, you know, us three guys can certainly appreciate, but then there are some things that we might be scratching our heads on going, do we agree or do we disagree with this? So I want to bring this to your guys' attention. Something in which Vivek stands by is every decision he makes is on the basis of making sure that it is for and by the Americans. Mm-hmm. So with this crazy world in which we're living in right now, where we feel like World War III is and could happen, he still states that any decision he makes is for and by the American citizens. Do you guys agree with that? You know, do you feel like this is something that is neglecting the humanitarian in us to be there for other countries? Or does this ideology actually make a lot of sense when you, as the president, especially of America, should only be there for your people? What do you guys have to say about
that? Mr. Karam, do you want to go?
Sure.
I
don't know if you guys have seen, but PBD just released a book, Choose Your Enemies Wisely, right? And he was on a podcast recently that I was listening to, and he was talking about how people need to be more selfish. And for a lot of people, they're going to see that in here and be like, why would you be selfish? And what he was trying to get across was selfish people actually care to be better, actually care to do more. Whereas the unselfish person will actually blame others and have other things to say and play victim more so than not. So I think in this regard, in the same way, if Vivek is being selfish on the self-interest of America and he wants to put those first before everything else, then I think they're only going to work on making their country better. And if every country followed suit and did the same thing, then I don't really see it being a problem. Obviously, it plays you're walking on thin lines when you're talking about different wars and things of that sort. But he was even talking about, like, I think it was Taiwan, or I can't remember exactly where it was, but he was saying that, in that region, they're choosing not to leave because they have semiconductors that is of interest of America. So their need to protect is a little bit different. Whereas I think he's talking about Ukraine and the money being spent over in Ukraine, they don't need to have military in there, but they have sent the money to help out, right? So there's certain things that he's pro and for that helps, but then there's certain things that he feels like it's not in the best interest of America. And from afar, I can appreciate that, because if he's looking at it as U.S. first, world second, and he also talked about, like, the UN leaders, that's their job. It's not his job. He's running as a U.S. president. He's not running to rule the world. So in that regard, I think he's kind of right.
Yeah, I'll add my thoughts on Vivek. I think one thing with him is he's the youngest running individual to run for a presidential campaign. So I think he speaks for a lot of young individuals and people kind of around our age, if not younger. He's got that sort of rebellious sort of character to him, like raw, direct, sort of like Trump. How Trump came into office and he just blew everybody out of the water was because of his just the most ridiculous, heinous things that he would say, and he would just say it from his heart. He didn't really care what people thought of him. And Vivek has that sort of personality where he's just basically going up on stage and just ripping people apart left, right, and center. And the reason he's able to do this, whereas the other candidates aren't, is because number one, he doesn't come from a political background, right? He comes from a business background. So as a successful serial entrepreneur, he is funding his own campaign. He doesn't have any sort of quote unquote political ties going into this. Now, I don't know if that's changed. Maybe that's changed now that he's in the spotlight. I'm sure there are, companies and individuals who are backing him at this point. Maybe not. I don't know. But I think he has, everything's against him. He's going against the grain. And I think that as an individual who's going against the grain, you have to put all your cards on the table. And you have to be better and quicker, faster, do things differently because you are coming from, because you are the black sheep. You are the outlier coming into this. All those other individuals that are running have political backgrounds, have been in the game longer than he has. So he's coming into this with, a completely different background, and he has to be better. He has to say things that are more dangerous. He has to be more bolder. And so I think it's, I could be wrong, but I think it's working for him in terms of attention wise. Because I mean, it's gained our attention, and other individuals. We're not even in the political space. We don't even, on the second floor, we don't really talk about the like politics or anything like that. But we see this guy in circles that we follow. So I think from an attention standpoint, I think he's garnering that. So.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, when you kind of see this at face value, something I know he preaches is going back to him being a proud American as he looks at the constitutional rights and recognizes that, everyone has the right to freely express their ideas. And when he said that actually, it sat very well with me, because here's somebody who isn't actually about canceling other people. I feel like in this cancel culture we're in going into 2024 is you say something that doesn't sit well with me, you're canceled. I'm going to block you. I'm going to, do my best to not even take the time to hear you out. And I find that he's been known to have very interesting characters on his podcast. He's been known to have certain people that others are frowning upon for him to, for lack of a better term, involve himself with. Mm-hmm. But when he, says all these things, he's backing it up with, listen, you have to understand, the way I quote this from when he was on the Peers podcast, is he says, the way we make ideas is actually through free speech and the ability to debate. So he said something along those lines where he knows that when he gets anyone to speak their thoughts freely, he can then allow that person to prevent themselves from actually being isolated with that. Mm-hmm. Because when you tell someone not to speak, he was saying this, when you tell them not to speak, what are they going to do? They're going to scream. And then now when you tell them not to scream, they're going to get violent. And when you tell them not to get violent, it's just going to keep escalating. So I think it's really unique to get someone like this who, isn't afraid to be bold, as Sean Kanungo likes to say, right? Like, he's saying things that people are going, wow, like a presidential elect just said this. And funny enough, there's more news going out there now where we were talking about this with the way Elon handled the situation publicly, is he also is just publicly telling people to go fuck themselves. So, it is interesting to now be in a world where we have a potential president to be out there. But now the question becomes, it sounds to me like we all agree that, I'm in favor of, if he handles and is there for Americans first, then selfishly, sure, Americans are going to feel better supported. Now the question becomes, would you guys vote for him? Like, if we were American, we're Canadian, but if we were American, would
dual
you be
citizenship coming soon, I'm voting.
And you'd vote for him?
Oh, I definitely would. I mean, I got to dive a little bit deeper into it, but for the most part, I mean, we even had the conversation not too long ago, maybe even a few months back, on basically he was coming up on our radar. And we were saying, is he getting more attention because he's brown, or is he getting attention because he has good things to say and the right things to offer for Americans? And I think now, this far into learning about Vivek, like at the start, we just kind of notice him, brown skinned dude, and he's running as a president. Is he going to be the first brown president? Or is it going to hold him back? Now I think it's clear to say that he's a very intellectual person. And one of the things that I've noticed in the last 2 years is people with money are the only ones that are able to speak freely, that have true free speech. So the guys like Elon, guys like Vivek, guys like Andrew Tate, people that have that much money are able to actually speak the truth. And it's, I don't know about you guys, but from the outside looking in, it seems like certain people also don't like that and fear that, because I think there's a lot more negative press sometimes when it comes towards these people who have that much money and don't have any political ties, because it's easier because they're not as controllable. Whereas maybe other people that have political ties just might be easily influenced, or maybe easier to influence in these scenarios.
Well, that's, I mean, just to add to that, that's another thing, right? Is like, you know, from what I understand is that a lot of these people that run, they get backing from certain companies, certain, you know, for example, Vivek always says Nikki Haley is backed by military contractors. And so
BlackRock
and
Larry Fink.
Exactly. So I think when when people are filling your pockets, you don't have that much. You are controlled. Yeah. What are you gonna say? You have to. If you are getting paid by companies, you are restricted in their sandbox at the end of the day.
Yeah, something I want to be very clear on too is I'm sure anyone listening to this can very much so see that here's 3 brown guys in favor of the first brown potential presidential elect, right? So I want to ask you guys this. Let's say he wasn't brown, and be very honest. Would you guys still be like in favor of him as much as you are now?
I would definitely be, because anybody who can tell somebody like Chris Christie to get his fat ass off the stage and go have a meal, they got my vote, right? If you can speak that much truth and honesty in front of that many people and back it up with facts, that's not the only thing. But obviously he has some polarizing statements that you're going to be like, whoa.
You love how raw he is.
I said the same thing about Elon Musk. I just believe that free speech and like what he's talking, to have both sides have a debate is healthier than silencing one side and controlling the narrative. To me, I just feel like even if I have somebody that I don't agree with, I would love to have the opportunity to debate. And that's what all these guys are kind of vouching for, because the more that gets taken away from you, the scarier the world to me becomes, because there's no longer having varying opinions. There's just one way, and that's the only way. And that's how kind of cancel culture is kind of uplifted and been so apparent in the last few years, in my perspective at least.
Yeah, I agree with that. I would say, yeah, same thing. I wouldn't. I mean, definitely as a polarizing figure, he definitely piques my interest, right? The fact that he comes from a business background also piques my interest, because he understands economics, he understands the markets, he understands potentially what it takes to get the economy back, or at least move it into the right direction. So, but also that he's young. I mean, let's be honest, man. Like, he's young. He kind of is in those circles that we kind of follow. He is in that radar of individuals and people that we see on a day to day, and a little bit of a younger audience. So I feel like he gets the younger crowd. So as older candidates, I can't relate to a Joe Biden. I can't relate to these other individuals that are running. And frankly, if I was a U.S. citizen, why, as a young person, why would I even care? You're 30, 40, 50, 60 years older than I am, and you probably have no idea how to use TikTok or Facebook or any of these things, and you probably are so far-fetched in your own ideologies, and you're probably really stubborn in those ways that you're probably not open to, like Karam said, debate or listening to the other side, or even being open to young people's opinions, you know?
And, you know, like, even on that side, like, people are shitting on him for being on TikTok. Like, the older crowd is almost being like, why are you doing this? You're making all these statements just to go viral on TikTok, and kind of using him trying to have a reach with and a connection with a younger audience almost against him, right? So to me, I actually respect him more because he's actually hitting the facts and able to have politically sound statements and also have full-on conversations with adults. But at the end of the day, like, you got to be able to connect with the youth and the people who are also going to be soon enough to be voting for you. And I think for, like, if it wasn't for him, I don't know how interested I'd be into the politics as well, right? Like, it's almost like there's somebody changing it up. There's somebody who's bold enough, like you're saying, to put themselves in the mix and almost go against the grain. But at the end of the day, his viewpoints are pretty good. And I would say they benefit Americans more than they harm them.
The thing that I'm going to say here is going to actually go a little bit against some of the things that he is saying, because as much as I do and am in favor of his position around being there for his citizens first, in a weird way, I think this could bite him in the ass. Now that this is going to be brought to the attention globally, and every other political leader, especially presidents who are leaders of other countries, are aware of his agenda. Like, they're like, okay, like, any decision you make is in favor of your people, not ours. I wonder what effect that's going to have on how much more difficult it's going to be to create strategic partnerships and strong allies globally. And I'll tell you something he said. And the way he says it, once again, he's a confident guy. It sounds like it's going to be as easy as ABC 1, 2, 3. Vivek says, yeah, here's how I'd handle the whole Russia-Putin situation. I'll go to Putin, I'll say, I'll cut you a deal. And the deal is, you are going to be able to have what you want, which from my understanding is pretty much he can overtake land in which he wants. Okay, so he does that. We're going to ignore the fact that is, like, extremely illegal with everything that you just did. Okay, but anyway, we'll let that happen as long as you just get rid of your deals that you're making with China. Just get rid of that partnership. And we'll forgive you on that front, and we'll all go about our day. So it's like, how difficult is that? Like, here you are going to someone who is deemed a war criminal, and you're saying, just do this for us, and we'll stand out of your way. But then now you also have to not only deal with how he's going to react to that, but you're also going to have to deal with China. So, you know, when I hear things like that, especially when it's positioned in power from someone who has as much confidence and is as well-spoken as Vivek, I personally can't help but be a little skeptical and go, is that one of those things that you're saying is going to be done right now? And you know that this is in favor of protecting your own people, but that could take years, or if not, it's just not going to get done. So, you know, I can't help but also admit that, yes, as much as I'm in favor of his mindset going into these things, I also think it will bite him in the ass, because everyone around the world is going to be very aware that he doesn't care much about them because he's more in favor of his own kind.
Yeah, I guess, and that one's like a weird one, because I guess I'm not too well versed in politics to that point where I can have such strong opinions and statements. But from the stuff that I have read and kind of listened and tuned into, he's still saying that he would provide monetary support, but the need to actually be there physically and actually change, like, have their troops. For example, he was talking about there's troops that died in Syria recently, and they like, from the mainstream media, we don't even know that they have troops there anymore. So his counter argument is, why are we there when things aren't changing and our people, the Americans, are dying and paying for this, right? So from that flip perspective, once again, I have no strong opinion on that. I really don't know. But I guess his point is what they've tried before didn't really work out well in the last 20, 30 years. And that's why he's looking to change it up, because they have tried the flip perspective, and to their American side, it didn't really benefit them.
And see, that's where I can actually stand with what you say, because at the end of the day, when America has a $33 trillion debt crisis, yet they're still willing to give billions of dollars to other countries, I totally get where he's like, we need to focus on the outcry of help that is coming from America first.
Yeah.
Right? So that's where it's actually, it's refreshing in an odd way to get someone who's like, well, we give, you know, presidential, you know, president of America has to take care of the whole world, when it's like, hey, well, your country's burning on fire in front of you to some little extent when you include with what's happened in certain countries. But it's like, it'd be really kick-ass to see what he does, you know?
It'd be very interesting. And I think sometimes I even think about it, like, imagine I have, or imagine you got a big loan, right? And then all of a sudden you're here being like, yeah, Crumb, you want 50K? I got you, bro. Like, individually, would that make sense to you? Probably not, right? So if we kind of like extrapolate that and take that as a perspective of every American, that's what a country is doing. Realistically, if they're sending billions of dollars, is everybody has money that they've lent out, but they're still being like, yeah, you know what? I'm broke as hell, but here, take my money, please.
Yeah, it's like I'm sitting on like a 50,000 credit card debt, but here, have $1,000, no problem.
Exactly.
It's like everyone's situation with Christmas. It's like we all broke, but let's give each other gifts, right? That's crazy. I was going to say this. I think the cool thing is, once again, I'm speaking on behalf of every brown person out there, is like, you know, gone are the times where your parents are going to go to you and be like, but you be doctor, you be engineer, you be lawyer. Now it's like, but you be content creator, you be president, or no problem, you know, you be martial arts. Like we're living in that world right now. I think that's sick, right? Like I'm a fan to also just recognize, like, you see someone where you see a little bit of yourself in them, and then you realize and you have more hope and belief that you can achieve anything. So I think despite whether Vivek wins or not, it has given himself a platform, an even bigger platform to sit on right now, and recognize, whether he knows it or not, that this move of him being out there and potentially being president is helping him in all his other endeavors.
Last thing, this just happened last night. This is why I want to bring it up. Is Trump? Let me quickly pull it up. The Colorado Supreme Court kicks Trump off the ballot.
Say that again.
The Colorado Supreme Court kicks Trump off the ballot. So in that same regard, I'm bringing this back up because Vivek also had a response to this, and he said that he's personally going to take himself out from the Colorado ballot, simply for this fact, because he thinks that this is unjust, and to those like Chris Christie, Nikki Haley, and DeSantis, if they don't join, then they're spineless. So I think this is why I kind of also enjoy Vivek's approach, because it doesn't benefit him to take himself out, but he's so far speaking the truth that he's willing to do things of that sort. How do you guys feel about that? Another question is, do you think Nikki Haley, DeSantis, and Chris Christie are going to follow suit and take themselves out, or Vivek's going to be the black sheep in this?
I think strategically they won't, and then they'll once again make him look like someone who's very different from their perspectives, and I think they're gonna feel like it's gonna work in their favor when possibly it won't. So, Nikki Haley, if you're listening to this, just follow Vivek. That's it.
All right, y'all. That's all I had to add. 2 cents in, second floor out. We will see you guys in the next episode.
Let's go.